Hey everyone, Wildman here. Episode 4 of our zoo design series, taking a look at Brookfield Zoo. Today we're going to focus on the monkeys and great apes and kind of take a look at what they look like in the past, present, and what a future plan might be for the primates, I guess we could say, of Brookfield Zoo. Currently, they're kind of housed, or they were housed, in 3 or 4 different areas around the zoo. We're going to kind of zoom in to this kind of central southern section of the zoo here, where most of the primate buildings or exhibits were housed throughout the years, I should say. And, first of all, we're going to kind of talk about this highlighted purple building, which was the primate or monkey house. It's one of the original buildings of the zoo. We'll go a little bit more into detail on that later. The green kind of squared off section in the middle, that's a baboon island or baboon mountain. It's kind of like a mountain peak type structure where several families of baboons lived. And then that blue squared off area kind of at the top, that's what's called Tropic World. It's a building that was started being built back in the 70s and was opened in the early 80s. And we'll go into a lot more detail about that because it's the primary great ape exhibits in the zoo currently. So let's jump back to that original plot of the zoo that we have been referring to throughout this series and just kind of show this area, without all the satellite kind of extra stuff in there. And as you can see, the purple is the monkey house, the green is what they called Monkey Island, and the blue square area up the top originally were 2 of the lawn areas in the central mall of the zoo. Zooming out a little bit on this original zoo plot or zoo map, I'll put the colors back on, and you can see this little orange circle up a little bit further to the west of where the rest of the primate buildings were. This was another mountain structure that actually housed some ibex, antelopes, and monkeys combined. And it was basically like a mountain island. It was surrounded by water. Personally, ever since I remember going to the zoo, the water had all been drained and it was more of a dry moat. Whenever I saw this exhibit, but you could see from that original postcard that it did have water at some point. And actually, this island area also housed sea mammals, or basically sea lions, at one point in the zoo's history as well. Jumping around a little bit and going back to this green area, which was the Monkey Island. For many years, this was a island, again, surrounded by water that held several troops of baboons. And again, in more recent years of the zoo, the water had been drained, and it was a very deep, dry moat. And that's what separated the guest from the baboons that would run around and wait for you to throw peanuts and stuff to them in this exhibit. This exhibit, maybe a few years back now, has also been closed. And I haven't been to the zoo myself in probably 5 years now because I live in Florida. But I believe that actual mountain may actually be demolished and not even there anymore. Now let's talk a little bit about that purple building. The purple building was the original monkey house. And, it was like kind of an old world traditional zoo building as far as how the animals were displayed. It was just a series of hallways and basically like a big circle that were barred cages on the inside and some outdoor exhibit room cages, I guess, that also were just barred. And this was really kind of different than the rest of the zoo. As I mentioned in some earlier episodes, that the zoo was kind of a forefront runner in creating moats and open air exhibits. But this primate house was one that was traditionally a barred cage exhibit building. And just a quick side note on that this building is now called the Swamp. It's totally been renovated, and it's now like a full ecosystem exhibit for animals that you would find in a swamp. It's not species specific anymore. And we'll talk more about the swamp in a later episode. Let's talk about Tropic World now. So Tropic World was built, actually construction started in the late 70s, and it opened up, I believe, in 1982 or 1983. I'd have to look that up to make sure. But this was a state-of-the-art new type of walkthrough exhibit at the time. And, even to this day, it still kind of holds its own. I always have really liked Tropic World, even though it's showing a little bit of age nowadays, and it could probably use some refreshing. It is very interesting on how they created this exhibit primarily for the primates, but it also introduced other animals for each of the different ecosystems that these different apes lived in. Now, let's talk about the building really quick. It's a kind of an eyesore, concrete and steel looking building from the outside. Not very pleasant to see. But once you go inside, it totally transforms into, again, what looks like a tropic world. It's just really quite amazing. And the thing is that this building, it doesn't look very tall from the outside, but what's unique about it is the interior is dug down really deep into the ground. So when you're in there, you're pretty much walking about ground level, or maybe about 10 or 15 feet up above the ground, but you're actually looking down probably 30 or 40 feet to the bottom of the exhibit. It's quite interesting. The interior exhibits are basically split into three different sections. The first one is South America. The central part of the building is like Southeast Asia or Asia. And the third part of the building has the Africa exhibit. So basically in each one of these, you're going to see animals that are common in each of those three different areas. So like the South America, you're going to see a lot of gibbons and monkeys, and I think there's some crocodiles in there. In the Asia section, there's some river otters down in the bottom area where there's water, and you'll have again some kind of gibbons or monkeys swinging around, and there's a whole orangutan section there. And in the Africa section, there's the main draw is the gorillas, and again there are some other smaller primates, and I believe like a pygmy hippo that might be tooling around in the water down there as well. The other interesting part is there's free flight birds from each area that fly around in the air over your heads and land in the bushes all around you as well as you go through the exhibit. Some of the other cool features of this exhibit are that it thunderstorms periodically, like every 15 minutes or whatever the timing is, thunder cracks and sprinkler systems in the roof or the ceiling area of the exhibit start a rainstorm down on the animals. So you see all the primates running for cover, screaming and yelling and jumping and doing things like that. So it's very quite interesting to see how they react when that type of environmental change happens while you're watching them. The other thing I wanted to say about this area is that it has a golden tamarin monkey exhibit in it, I believe, and they're basically like a small raised island kind of in front of the viewing trail that goes through this building. And the zoo has a program where they've been reintroducing these monkeys back into the wild periodically, and they actually do it in the forest area within the zoo grounds. And it's just, again, a very interesting program that the zoo has incorporated. I could talk about Tropic World for probably another 20 minutes easily, but I'll try to cut this section a little bit short right now, and you can look it up online if you want to see more information and see more pictures and videos of Tropic World. But one other quick story I just want to say that this exhibit is somewhat world famous for is a number of years ago a small child fell off of the viewing trail, and I believe fell like 20 or 30 feet or so into the gorilla exhibit. And one of the adult female gorillas actually went and grabbed the unconscious child and carried him and protected him from the other gorillas in the exhibit and brought him to like the backstage like medical door where the keepers would examine the animals for health reasons and so on. And they kind of attributed that story to being or happening because she had a some child herself in recent years, and was trained to bring her infant gorillas to this door for medical examination. So again, just very interesting, the animal kingdom and how it interacts with humans. Okay, let's take a look at the future development plan of the zoo and how the primate exhibits at least are planned to be changed. Right now, none of this work has been done at the zoo. I really like what's proposed here, and let's just take a look at what some of the details look like. First of all, let's just kind of talk about what isn't a primate area anymore. And that would be the old monkey house, as it was called. You can see now it's called the swamp, and I know I mentioned this earlier. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And, what that building looks like nowadays. The other thing is right here is where the baboon island was. You can see this plan still says that there's a current baboon exhibit and a future alternate exhibit, but I believe this exhibit's closed. It's still there, but there are no animals living in that exhibit anymore. The other thing you might notice is there was a old reptile house right here that appears to be gone, and there was a big reflecting pool right here. Now let's switch over to talk a little bit more about the primates. So this building right here is the existing Tropic World building. And first I want to just kind of talk about how the current walkway goes through. So over here in this little, like more wooded area, there's a little bit of a queue line that goes through here. And that was really built for back in the day when Tropic World was really, really popular when it first opened up, and you'd sometimes wait for hours to get into this building. The queue line is still there. It has some little interactive exhibits in there about the great apes and about rainforest and things like that. So it's still a nice area to walk through. But you entered the building here, and you started going up a series of small ramps until you got to the level of where the interior walkway was, and it kind of followed the back side of the building here. And when you got into the Africa section, there was a bridge that crossed, and the walkway kind of goes up and around the gorilla exhibit where it connects back, or you could go back out through the exit door, which was about in the same area that this shows on the map here. One of the other things is, this was pretty much divided right here in the middle. So you had South America here, you had the Asia section here, and the Africa section over here. So looking at the proposed renovation and changes in this future plan, a lot of what I'm saying here are just theories. I have nothing to prove what I'm backing, but just kind of understanding how this plot has been laid out. It looks like they're kind of separating the gorillas or the Africa section of the primates into this larger section now. So, for example, they even call it gorilla rescue, and it says entry and exit. So it's got a single entry and exit right here. So just kind of, looking at what I believe is going to happen here is you would follow a trail. Again, I don't know if this is counterclockwise or clockwise, but I'm going this way. It goes around the gorilla exhibits where it enters into Tropic World building again. Now, this would be a new entrance that would have to be built, unless there might even be a service entrance there right now that I'm not aware of. But the reason for it, I believe the interior and exterior is, in the winter months in Illinois, the gorillas probably wouldn't be outside as much, so that I would guess that the interior Tropic World gorilla exhibit would remain relatively the same. And then once inside, you would go around, something similar to the existing pathway where you could come back outside here and continue on down the path to the exit of this exhibit. But I'm guessing that Africa will be separated from the rest of Tropic World in the future. Now, you can see here's the mandrill baboon section again. There's an area here with either some bridges or walkways that go to a second area here. This, I'm assuming, would be replacing the old baboon island that used to be here. So it would be something similar, probably rock work, and obviously some waterways through there for the primates to run around and play in. Now, this says future renovation of Asia and South America. So Asia and South America are still going to be in here, but notice the path change now. There's a new entrance here. So I'm kind of thinking that the path will come in and either follow the old path that's already there, but maybe it will come around and exit out here, or there might even be a cut across like what used to be in the Africa world to get out here. So again, I segmented from the gorilla part because that's more Africa, and the Southeast or South American and Asia part would be almost like its separate exhibit. Let's take one last look at the satellite view of the zoo again, and just to remind you and give you some perspective, the area we're talking about is right here. Here is Tropic World, the old baboon island, the old primate house, and this is the more formal garden area or lawn areas of the zoo. And let's overlay the future plan, and you could see right here that all of that new kind of gorilla rescue exhibit falls in the area right now that is basically just open lawn area. So it wouldn't take much as far as demo to get that exhibit built there, and it's currently not an open exhibit at all. Now, one other thing I just want to point out, bringing back up the future plan, and that is that earlier I mentioned that that the gorilla or Africa section is going to be separated from the rest of the primates, and the reason for that is if you really look at this future plan, this entire area of the zoo right here, I might not be getting it circled exactly right, but this is all going to be like an Africa themed area, or at least what animals reside in Africa. And we'll touch on this a little bit more in future episodes, but if you remember when I talked about the big cat section future plan in the earlier episodes, the lions were mysteriously missing from the big cat area. And as you can see, we'll look at it closer again later. Like I said, the lions are in the Africa area. All the pachyderms are in the Africa area. Antelopes and mixed hoofed animals are here. We got the giraffes over here. So, it's going to shape up to be a huge Africa area, and that's again why the gorilla area is entering and exiting right here, which is kind of almost in the center hub of the Africa section of the zoo. One last thing I want to point out on this future plan is if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you could see a couple little dotted lines cutting across the outside edge of the gorilla rescue area. That is the proposed sky ride or chairlift ride that might eventually make its way into the park. And if that actually happens, I think it would be really cool, because you kind of get to look down into the gorilla exhibit if it's placed where it shows on this design. So that's it for the